I'm currently working on my pre-confirmation, so today I'm gonna present what I have found and done so far in the last 5 months. And to begin, I will thanks to Amelia for her presentation, which will provide general background information for mine, because I'm gonna start with the Sustainable Development Goals. The goals has been adopted by all the members of the United Nations in 2015. But the steps from global goals into national policies are different between developed countries and developing or poor countries, based on their own political economic situation. Then the step from policy to real action, there are even much bigger difference. So in my research, I will focus on the science that related to or focus on the Sustainable Development Goals to look at how science, policy, and practice can work together to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in developing countries. When talking about science, policy, and practice, it includes the human that hold the responsibility within it, such as the scientists, the policymakers, and urban practitioners. Look at this, my supervisors would say this is too broad. You need to narrow the scope. So, based on my background, I chose to focus on climate change adaptation, and in Vietnam, my home country. But the term climate change adaptation is still big, so I decided to focus on one of the most critical problems that we are facing now in Vietnam, that is urban flooding. Here, supervisor would say again, can you do it in the whole Vietnam, or should you focus on smaller area? Then here we come, the Mekong Delta. Let's talk about the Delta. It's located in the far south of Vietnam at the end of the Mekong River. Nowadays, one of the most populated delta in the world with over 20 million people. And it's among 5 delta that's most vulnerable to climate change and sea level rise. And we see here the map. Recent indicators that show that up to 90% of the delta will be drowned underwater in just the next few decades. And the delta cities, because of the water civilization, like people life somehow really tied with water, so all of the delta cities are located next to rivers, big rivers. And now they are facing many fresher flooding. First is river tide or tidal flooding, as we see here in the photo. Like in the event of high tide, water from the river just flow over the road into houses. And this happens like almost every single day in September, October, or almost the same thing happens after heavy rainfall in the summer. We somehow get used to that, accept it as part of our life, but it's really kind of suffering. Then come the land subsidence, because the city foundation or the soil is mostly clay and sand, so it's pretty soft. So the increasing pressures of buildings, people, and the extraction of groundwater underneath are making the city sinking. Here we see land is sinking and sea level is rising. Things are just getting worse together. Facing on those vulnerabilities, the Delta has somehow become kind of hotspot for research. Many international and national scientists have been seeking, proposing many solutions to deal with urban flooding. The general ideas of this solution is to give more space in the cities for water, for example, green spaces along the river instead of road and building, or more efficient drainage systems so in the event of heavy rain, water can flow away quickly rather than staying on the road. Then on the policy side, the governments are truly aware of the impact of the climate impact, and they have issued many resolution directions for the sustainable development of the Delta. And these two groups are somehow working together through seminar, workshop, coordination office, so the scientists can support the policymakers to produce proper policy to deal with urban flooding. However, the step from policy to practice are facing many challenges, such as lack of financial, human resources, lack of governance capacity, especially at the local one, And the hierarchical governance system, for example, the lower governance levels has to obey the orders from the higher one, regardless those orders are suitable for that specific location or not. Then come other influence such as corruption. And it's causing delay in implementation. For example, one project may take over 10 years to finish. So when it finishes and operates, it has been outdated with the new and unpredictable impacts. And the mismatches between different governance levels, as I have said, or mismatches between what has been planned and what's really been built. And sometimes it's causing maladaptation, it's been providing bad results or things that make the situation become worse. This linear approach is also what I found is the gap in literature. Scientist studies are mainly looking at how science becomes policy and how policy gets implemented or to assess the implementation gap. But what I'm missing here is the roles of practice in evaluating the quality of the science, the quality of the plan, or how practitioners can advise agenda for the research and the policy making. Putting this into the theory of science policy practice interface, we see there are uncompleted circles. A lot of attention has been given into one linkage rather than the other. And other missing is that this study haven't assessed the roles of each component in the interaction between the other two. Like for example, how policy can provide better environment for the communication between scientists and practitioners, or if policy are making them far away. So my research question is, how do science, policy, and practice link and influence each other in the process of flood measurement in the Vietnam Mekong Delta cities, the roles of each component, and also the parallels exist between them. My objective is to understand the communication mechanism between scientists, policymakers, and practitioners, as well as internal and external parallels or facilitators exist, and to understand the roles of each component in the interaction with and between the other two. Through my studies, I want to develop a framework that can link science, policy, and practice to foster the effective communication for better flood measurement and ensure the Delta City resilience to the climate change and sea level rise. Because policy is the crucial factor to facilitate the communication. So I expect that the framework will be useful for other developing countries with the same political economic situation, or especially with the centralized or hierarchical governance system. My research also responds to the decade of action, the call of the United Nations last year to push more action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Actually, we have now less than 8 years until the deadline 2030. And my research responds directly to the goals of sustainable cities and communities, climate action, and partnership for the goals. I would love to use this opportunity to have broader connection with researchers whose interest is about policy for climate action, or water management in developing countries, or how to raise better link between science and practice for climate change adaptation. Thank you.